Third pace.
If your content isn't being shared, you are failing. Yes, creating content that gets shared is the ultimate goal. Well, it should be. And today we'll show you how to do just that. From eye-catching thumbnails to leveraging the latest trends, discover the secrets to making your content irresistible, learn why shareability matters, and how to design content that people can't wait to pass along, all on this episode of Content on the Go. Hey everyone, I'm Darren Lake and welcome to Content on the Go, a podcast by Podpaste. Each episode we answer questions or talk about one specific idea to help you market your business or brand better. And we do that by making them easy to digest, short and concise, because we all have a business to run. Let's go. With over 20 years of bilingual content and communications experience, Chris excels in creating and managing impactful content across various platforms. At the time of this publication, Chris is the global content marketing lead at Byte Plus, who is known for apps like TikTok, Pico, CapCut, and Lemon 8. All right, brand dilution is something I've been thinking about for a while, so we'll just jump right into the first point because I've got a strong opinion about this. And the first one is why thinking like brand collaboration is a salad instead of a melting pot. And the definition, this is kind of a framework to think about. So this is like a mental model. A salad is, it retains distinct flavors that complement each other. The tomato and the olive, you can taste that they're two different things, but they complement each other really well. Whereas a melting pot is like everything blends together, like, pasta, bolognese, where it's just like, like I can't taste that because that now the tomato sauce is doing that with the, with the cheese and all that. So you want a collaboration usually, unless, it's a long-term type of relationship. You want the collaboration to be where the two parts, the two entities can stand alone on their own and they're their own thing. Cool example is Drake doing his 2022 summer house release. And it actually, Drake is still doing his thing, but he's also going in with the house and electronic dance scene. I personally like it. I know a lot of people hate it, but I think he did the two genres justice, and he didn't melt them together to be this like kind of super generic poppy blah thing, which has happened. Dance music and pop music have always come together. But this one felt a bit more like the two genres still stood on their own. That's a personal opinion and a personal example. Do you have any examples, Chris?
Yeah, I love listening to Joe K's selection on Apple Music, and I think he has been doing that for the last 10 years, underground and moving into mainstream, having his own show on Apple Music, and, he mixes so many different genres of music together, whether it's breakbeats, hip-hop, or house music, and, he does it so well. And I think that's one of the examples of how you want to blend things together, and again, who are you? So Joe K is like, I'm just trying to introduce good music to you, and I think what really appeals to me, sonically pleasing, and it's really rhythmic, and that's who he is, right? And looking out for underground artists, that's what he's good at, curating these people who are not heard and trying to bring them up to the ground. So I think that ties back to his own brand persona and his own brand story, and then melding all these different genres of music. Doesn't matter if they're underground or coming to mainstream, but it all sounds good together. And then there's this other brand, which I think most guys are familiar with, which is the Japanese sex toy Tinga. And for a company like that, it is so difficult to do advertising, right? And it's so difficult to create content because you cannot show the real thing. So I think what they did in the end was to have all these different collaborations with athletes and the dancers, the skateboarders, and it's just saying and telling a story whereby, this is for everyone. This is for every kind of guy, or this is also for the trendy guys. And you start to make that a sort of emotional association with these images of the athletes, of the hip hop dancer, of the baseball player, and, of all these different profiles. And from there, they tell the story of how their lives are just as it is. I'm an athlete, this is what I do, and this is why I'm athletic, I'm energetic. And those are very emotional connotations, to the toy that they're trying to sell. And that sort of collaboration, I feel like, is intriguing for a company like that. And I think that's the lesson that I learned from their campaign. Yeah.
That's a fun one. That sounds like a fun one. It's like when Tinder they did a really fun podcast. They did 2 seasons. Gimlet produced it, a narrative storytelling podcast where it's like it's a dating. How do we, and they basically just jumped right into, I think it was the second episode, and it was about uh, penis pictures and
Yeah.
how that's a big thing on Tinder, and they just jump right into it, and it's like, they obviously, this isn't really with brand dilution, but it's like this is just more on how do you tell something without being graphic, but they just went right into it, and I thought that was really cool of the brand to do that, and they talked to uh, scientists about why males do that, why do females not like it, but males keep doing that and all that stuff. But again, I digress. Let's go into point number 2. Be careful with too much stock B-roll photos and video on your brand. If this is something that kind of just irks me whenever, especially personal brands. Personal brands, they usually don't do it, but I think just brands in general, it's just kind of like, I could just tell these all stock videos, like, and photos. And it's just like, if you do it too much, people like, who are you? Like, you're just a whole bunch of stock videos and photos. So give me an example that you have. You have an example about house decor?
And I think it is not an example from the industry. It's just something that I learned from TV shows. Like recently I'm watching Dream Design Home Makeover that's done by Shay and Sid McGee in Utah. And there's 3 seasons of that on Netflix, and I watched all of it. And I think in one episode they were trying to decorate this huge wall for their client, and you want to put up pictures and stuff, right? And usually there'll be like photographs and family photos, and that's what they get from the clients, and they blow it up, and fine, that's very authentic because that's what the family is about. But how do you create from scratch, if it's nothing, right? So there's this episode where this couple lost their son to a heart defect at about 4 or 5 months old. But within that time frame, they took their son to the mountains every other day, and so the McGee's, they went to the mountains and they asked their designer and photographers to take pictures of the mountains, and they blow it up and then they put it up onto the wall. So I feel like, hey, they could have just gone for a stock image of that mountain, right? But they didn't. So they took the time to go to the mountains to find an angle that is really beautiful to the tracks that they have walked, and then gather elements from that journey and incorporate into the design of the home as well. So everything came together. But I was so intrigued by those few photographs that the McGee's asked their designers and the photographers to take. And I thought, like, this is what brands should do. Put your heart into it and not use B-rolls and stock images too excessively. But even for things like that, you can create from scratch, and it might be a subtle detail that would just be bypassed, and you think like, why should we invest so much in that? But over time, when you're creating pieces and pieces of content coming together, and they will get a sense of who you are finally.
Yeah, it's a great point about, it just takes a bit of time. And if you have people going through a customer journey and they follow you on social media or whatever it is, it's the 7 rule. I think it's 15 rule or 21. So people now need to see your stuff 21 times for them to actually take an action and click or do something on it. But if they're constantly seeing this consistency with your content and the certain photos and videos that you use and all that, it's just like your fonts, like you can't just have this disjointed amount of fonts and colors. Like most brands, they have the same logo and the same font, the same colors, at least for a while, and then they slowly change them up. You want to be the same with your photos and videos. This is kind of a bit of a hard left turn, but this falls under brand dilution, and this is actually spreading yourself too thin on too many platforms. This actually is a recipe for 1, burnout, and 2, you literally just, it's like you can't focus on one thing. And there's a good analogy, and hopefully we'll have someone put this visual, but if you think this is taken from Greg McEwen. He wrote the book Essentialism, and then he wrote the next book he wrote was Effortless. Yeah, Effortless. And the beauty is that, or the beauty of this diagram, or the whole reason is essentialism is basically, if you think of a circle and you think of arrows, which would be energy, if you're on a bunch of different platforms, you're just a whole bunch of arrows all over the circle. So the circle is just going to spin or not go anywhere, But if you actually focus on one, then you stack up the arrows in one line, and then you can actually go forward. as fast and, as quickly as possible with the most amount of power. So it's tempting to jump on every platform when you first, get onto social media. I think, if you have a team, maybe you can do that, but you're still like, how about you just figure one out? Like, the platforms aren't going anywhere. If they're here today and gone tomorrow, then like they weren't worth it. So like TikTok, it took me 2 years to get on TikTok. I just got on TikTok last week proper. I've been on it. I got my name and everything. I sat on it for a bit. And I was like, how do I work TikTok? And I watched it, but I did Instagram, and I was like, you know what? There's still the same humans. It might be a bit different humans on TikTok, but I started seeing more of the millennials going over to TikTok, more of the older people, the senior millennials like me going over to TikTok. And I started seeing more runners go over, but I said, everything that's working on Instagram will work on TikTok, or a certain amount of it, or a specific thing that I'm doing on Instagram will work on TikTok as far as what I'm making. And I kept trying to figure out what that was. And then I said, aha, here it is. Now let me try that. And it's been a bit of trial and error with TikTok, but I'm really glad I sat back and didn't try to build my Instagram and my TikTok and my podcast and my newsletter and LinkedIn and this, all at the same time. Like, I'm sure as far as marketing goes, marketing is probably the least amount of resources that you'll have at your company thrown at marketing. Most companies, at least when they start out. So just be really careful with that. That's my opinion. What do you think about that?
Yeah, just start with a platform that gives you the most returns and a better ROI for your media spend. Like, if most of your users are actually on Facebook, then it doesn't make sense to start creating a suite of content for TikTok. You just want to go slow on that, right? But you want to focus on your efforts, your resources on creating things for the Facebook audience. And that's where you get most returns, because they are your target customers and they are hanging out at that platform. So why are you creating things that they are not hanging out on? And this doesn't make sense. So, and also when you are creating content for people on a platform that gives you the most returns, and I think that will be more efficient on your production spend and the kind of returns that you are expecting. That's efficiency we're talking about. Yeah.
All right, and the last point is, again, this is all around brand dilution. Don't say negative, false, or manipulative things, especially in the titles or your first lines of your posts. It's easy to do, and I see a lot of brands do it, especially personal brands. But you slowly dilute the trust of your potential customers and clients by doing this crap. And an example is, you say this post is going to be about this, and it ends up not being about that. Or there's if it's a 6-minute YouTube video, your title is Jeff Bezos, and this is a friend of mine that did that, and he'll probably never see this, but the title was Jeff Bezos gave me $1 million to make this video. And he starts it off with da-da-da, and it leads up to it, and then at the end he basically goes, yeah, no, Jeff Bezos actually wasn't involved, but I knew it was the best title to get you. I was like, oh, dude, really? Really? Like, it was pure clickbait. And there's hooky titles, there's catchy titles. How to run, again, I have a running brand, how to run your fastest marathon in the least amount of time. That's a good title. It's interesting. Oh, wow. How do I do that in the least amount of time? Or, when you start off your run, you're doing this all wrong. Here's how you fix that. It's, so it used to be called that, that's not clickbaity. That's just hooky. That's good. And I actually then deliver on that promise by telling you what you did wrong and here's what you do to fix it. That doesn't mean that it's being clickbaity. I could easily call it, do this thing. This will help you run your race better, but you're doing this wrong. Do this sounds way better. So again, that's a middle ground. You have to deliver on whatever you give people in the beginning. And if you keep doing that clickbaity crap, people will drop off soon. They'll start unfollowing you quick. And that's just my personal opinion on that. You got anything to say about that or anything else to end this on?
No, I think we've summed it up. We talked about framework on how to collaborate and blend things together. We talked about how you should be authentic with your B-rolls and stock pictures. Don't spread yourself too thin on too many social media platforms, and be brutally honest, or at least not not lying, not saying things that are not about you. So I think we pretty covered that much.
From Podpaste, you've listened to Content on the Go. Again, I'm Darren, and Podpaste hopes you found more insights and tips into your business or brand. If you've liked what you heard, please share a link with other businesses or marketers if you think they would get something from this. And for a limited time, we are offering 2 special services for people. The first is aimed at businesses that have never done podcasting and want to try it out before committing to a full series. Think Try Before You Buy, where we will edit and repurpose a podcast episode into 10 pieces of content for you for only $95. That's 82% off our normal rate. But if you already have a podcast going, we'd love to edit an episode for free for you or repurpose it into 10 pieces of content to show you what is possible. Either way, sign up at the link in the show notes or YouTube description below to jump on a quick 10-minute discovery call where we can brainstorm ideas or audit your existing podcast and help shape your next series. See you on the next episode.